Oh boy, we're live. Hey everybody, we will be getting started in 3 or 4 minutes here. So we'll see you then. Getting started in 3 or 4 minutes here. So we'll see you then. All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome to 4YI3. That is the third for-year information that we have ever done. My name is Collin Knopp-Schwyn. I am your host for 4YI tonight. We have a very fun show for you. We have 13 performers who are going to be performing tonight. It's going to be a really good show, I'm hoping. It also might be a huge fucking mess because we have never done this show digitally before, and this is... Oh my God. There we go. Found the source of that annoying noise. It was my fault. Thank you all for bearing with us. I'm running tech for the show. I am also hosting it, which is why it is going to be this tremendous mess. 4YI we did our first one about a year ago. I think it was May 2019. It was at the Tank, which if you've never been is a lovely theater in Midtown Manhattan, which is a terrible part of the world, but a nice little gem in the center of it. It's 4-minute presentations about things that people have niche knowledge about. We've got all kinds of stuff presented there in the past, and we're going to have quite a lot more today. I'm giving everybody 4 minutes and 15 seconds for today's performance, just to make it a little easier with the new technical issues that we are inevitably going to run into here. but everyone is going to go in turns here. Meanwhile, you'll all publicly be able to see the timer, and you'll be able to watch as everyone works fearfully through their presentation that is probably too long. So you'll see that. Our order tonight is me first, followed by Carinn Candelaria, Pat Dunning, Elizabeth Fetterolf, Stevie Rowe, Talia Feldberg, Kev Berry, Landry Levine, Meghan Finn with special guests, Mike Fracentese, Hallie Ayres, and Liz Bennett. There is also a secret judge in our audience here today who will be awarding 2 secret prizes. So the participants do not know what the prizes are in order so that they can't pander to the secret judge. But I know what the prizes are, and I think it's a very good set of 2 prizes. So then those folks will get $10 each at the end of the show when those are announced. Also, this month, we are hosted through the Tank, as I mentioned, through the Cyber Tank, which is the Tank's online platform. This month, the Tank is raising money for Fair Fight, which is an organization that helps support free and fair elections throughout the country. And if you are interested in contributing to that, you can head over to, or you can text Fair Fight, one word, to 44321. I also want to promo the Emergency Release Fund, which is an organization here in New York that serves to, release trans people from jail, specifically from Rikers Island. Also the Black Trans Travel Fund, which is a fund for helping Black trans people throughout New York and New Jersey access private rides in cars to get where they need to go. Let me just share real quick the links for those here. Sorry, share screen. There we go. Those are the links for the Black Trans Travel Fund rather, and the Emergency Release Fund. Cool beans. So, Landry, are you on the call?
I am.
Cool. So Landry is going to be my timer since I am going first here. How you feeling about that?
I'm ready.
All right, let's see if I'm ready. All right, I don't think you need to see my video, but you do need to see my screen. All right. All right, Landry, are you ready? Oh, great, here we go. In 2006, voters in Minneapolis approved a referendum to change local elections for their city council and mayor to a ranked choice voting system in which voters could choose their first, second, and third choices. This eliminated the need for primary elections, which were both costly to conduct and historically had low turnout. In 2012, ranked choice voting got its first real test when incumbent mayor R.T. Rybak decided not to run for another term. Pay just $20 and your name was on the November ballot. This election was anybody's game, and boy, oh boy, were there a lot of players. Welcome to the Minneapolis mayoral election of 2013. Here are a few of the stories from this ridiculous race. So of the 35 candidates who filed, only 8 were seen as real contenders. These goofballs here, mostly politicians and mostly Democrats. Now, technically, the mayoral election is nonpartisan. Candidates can be endorsed by parties, but they can run under whatever 3-word label they wanted. Most of the leading candidates ran as DFL, or Democratic Farmer Labor, which is what the Democrats are called in Minnesota. This guy, who was probably the leading conservative candidate, ran as independent, responsible, inclusive, which means absolutely nothing. This guy, who was a city council member in the 1960s, wanted to build a casino downtown to solve the city's money woes. You love to see it. These folks all sought out the DFL's endorsement, which you need 60% of delegates to win. This guy, Mark Andrew, was ahead on the ballot after each of the first 4 rounds of voting, but he didn't have the necessary 60% to win. Then Betsy Hodges down here invited all of her delegates outside for pizza, which meant that there weren't enough delegates in the convention for a quorum on the 5th ballot, so the whole ordeal ended with no endorsement whatsoever. All right, so who are some of these other candidates and what do they stand for? I really love this pair of bald guys right here. This guy, Bill Kahn, ran under the three-word platform of last Minneapolis mayor because he wanted to abolish the mayorship. This other guy, John Charles Wilson, ran as a Lauraist communist. Laura obviously refers to Laura Ingalls Wilder, author of the Little House on the Prairie books. Part of John's platform was that Laura Ingalls Wilder is God, which is cool. Now, eagle-eyed viewers may notice this Johnny Depp-looking guy down here. This guy's legal name is Captain Jack Sparrow. His platform was count all rankings, which would mean that instead of getting to rank only 3 candidates on the ballot, you could rank up to all 35. This isn't a bad idea in itself, although practically this is what the 2013 ballot looked like already. So here's what it would look like in order to be able to rank all 35 candidates, which is a lot. A small sidebar, somebody dressed up as the ballot for Halloween in 2013, which I absolutely love. Probably the highlight of the 2013 election, though, was Jeffrey Allen Wagner. So Jackie Cherry Holmes up here on the left, one of the front runners, puts up this very generic campaign ad on YouTube and labels it Jackie Cherry Holmes Viral Ad HD. It gets 80 views. But then Jeffrey down there barrels in with this absolute full body check of an ad that legit gets hundreds of thousands of views, and for good reason. Anyway, the end of the story is that Betsy Pizza Party Hodges here wins the election, and then the city council increases the filing fee for mayor from $20 to $500. Now, Minneapolis has seen plenty of clowns since then, but nothing quite like the clown car election of 2013. Thank you. And thank you, Landry, for your help there. All right, moving right along here, our next presenter is Carinn Candelaria. Carinn, are you around? All right, fantastic.
Oh. All right.
You all good, Carinn?
Sure think so.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. Wait, do we have the timer up? Well, I see it on my.
Oh, here, let me restart it for you. Go for it.
Okay. Hi, I'm Carinn, a licensed New York City tour guide. I'd like to tell you that today marks the 27th day of protests against police brutality here in New York City. Others might like to tell you today marks a month of riots. In an attempt to correct this misnomer, let's take a moment to remember an actual riot. How about the bloodiest and most destructive riot in US history? The New York City draft riots of 1863. This is our baby Abe Lincoln. He was president at the time, but wasn't particularly popular. New Yorkers voted against this guy 2-1 in the election of 1860. Still, when the Civil War started, thousands of New Yorkers volunteered to enjoy a weekly pay packet and an adventure sure to put hair on their happy trail, all in an effort, of course, to preserve the Union. And up until September of 1862, that's exactly what the Civil War was all about. But then the war went on and wasn't really going their way, so Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation and shifted the focus of the war from simply preserving the Union to emancipating those enslaved in the South. With this radical shift came a radical response. New York City's economy was as dependent on slavery as any plantation owners. New York banks financed the spread of cotton plantations, and cotton made up 40% of shipping in the New York harbor. Even the New York City mayor made a fortune selling cheap clothing for the enslaved. New Yorkers were furious that they would fight to preserve the Union, but not to free the slaves. So participation dwindled and the Conscription Act was passed, and on July 11th, 1863, the first draft started as names of New Yorkers were randomly pulled from a wooden drum dubbed the Wheel of Misfortune. Yes, this is the draft of the draft riots of 1863. So what's the buzz? The draft made all men from 20 to 35 years old and all unmarried men from 35 to 45 liable for military duty, with, as always, some exceptions. To avoid your duty, one may present an acceptable substitute to go in your place, or you may pay $300, which is about $5,500 today. So these qualifications put the burden on poor whites, mostly Irish immigrants whose yearly income would be only just barely above the $300 that you could pay them off with. So meanwhile, these men had been nursing the fear that the newly emancipated Black population would come to New York and take their jobs for lower wages, just as they had done to the Black population when they immigrated from Ireland just a few years earlier. And furthermore, Black people were not eligible for the draft because they were not considered citizens. So we have complications between rich-poor relations, Black-white relations, and local federal relations. So let's get to the action. On Monday, July 13th, employees of New York City railroads, shipyards, machine shops, and ironworks didn't show up for work and instead marched to the district provost marshal's office at East 46th and 3rd Avenue. And then they just stood there, not really knowing what to do. But then somebody set the marshal's office on fire. And after this eruption, the predominantly Irish group began targeting Black community members and those who supported them, burning buildings, smashing windows, pulling up cobblestones in the streets. And over 5 days, 500 armed men set fire to 50 buildings and lynched 11 Black men. Hundreds of Blacks were forced out of the city, making a more noticeably white domain. And by the end of the riots, New York City's Black population had diminished by 20%. One stop on the mob's journey for destruction was 5th and 43rd Street, otherwise known as the Colored Orphan Asylum, home to 233 Black children at the time. Thankfully, the children were saved as the mob looted, then burned their orphanage to the ground. Of course, this wasn't the first example of racist riots in New York City, and likely won't be the last. Before these riots were the 5 Points riots of 1834, when Irish immigrants destroyed the interior of the Spring Street Presbyterian Church between Spring and Varick Streets. This was an abolitionist church rumored to be a spot on the Underground Railroad. Today, it is a hotel or hell or something like that. After these riots are the actions we hold today and tomorrow to remind folks that we aren't rioting. We're just not the North Star savior New York we thought we were. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Carinn. Thank you all so much for being here. Also, if there's audio or video issues that are happening that I am not aware of, feel free to shout it out in the YouTube comments. I am checking those intermittently. Up next, we have Pat Dunning. Pat, you there?
Hello. Yes, give me just a minute. Be sharing a portion of my screen in just a sec. Whoop. All right, I think that should be good, right? Is that coming through fine?
Looks good to me.
All right, let me just test. Great, and that. All right. So, hi, my name's Pat. I'll be doing this presentation for you. I think my friend Sam is watching this, and it's his birthday. So happy birthday to you, my friend.
All right.
All right, ready to go.
Go for it.
Okay. What were you doing on December 30th, 2011? At the time, I was like a senior in high school. I would have been on my winter break, gearing up for a New Year's party the next day, something like that. But if you happen to be a resident of Samoa, the island nation in Oceania, northeast of Australia and New Zealand, if you were to say anything about what you did on December 30th, 2011, you would be lying, because the island nation of Samoa did not have a December 30th, 2011. In fact, around mid-2000s, Samoa announced its plan to transition itself across the international date line, switching from being basically the very last country on the globe to begin a calendar day to being one of the first. 1 minute after 11:59 p.m. on Thursday, December 29th, the clocks changed, and it became 12 a.m. midnight at the beginning of Saturday, December 31st. Now, Samoa, of course, did not move anywhere geographically. It's an island. It stayed in place and got permission, I guess, to bend the international dateline just a little bit to the east, just enough to shift the official time zone of Samoa, while leaving American Samoa, which is only 30 miles east of the Samoan Islands, back in the previous day. When Samoa jumped ahead in time to December 31st, American Samoa began December 30th. To pilot a boat 30 miles from one island to the other now takes you back in time. Now, why would a nation do this? For Samoa, it was an economic decision, mostly. Samoa does a lot of business with Australia and New Zealand, which were a day ahead of Samoa before the shift. So before the shift, if you sent your Samoan emails to Australia on your Friday, they're already on their Saturday, their weekend. And then when they email you back on their Monday, it's still weekend for you in Samoa because it's Sunday. So the time shift was a plan to make business easier. And this is not the first and only time this kind of time shift has happened. A country can do it for political reasons. Spain switched its time zone up an hour forward in 1941 as a gesture of solidarity from Francisco Franco to Adolf Hitler. Crimea voted to join Russia in 2014 and shifted its time zone 2 hours forward to line up with Moscow. In 2015, North Korea adopted what it called Pyongyang time and set its clocks back half an hour to reflect on the time before the Japanese colonization. So political reasons. And, in fact, the concept of standardized time zones really only emerged in the 1800s when train travel was booming. We're familiar with these 25 clean and tidy strips of time across the globe, latitudinally or longitudinally. But that was very much spearheaded by the United States and the United Kingdom, these Western powers. The UK made Greenwich Mean Time. Canada invented daylight savings time in 1884. But if you look at an actual map of what time zones different countries obey, it looks much different. In fact, 8 countries on this planet have a single unified time zone across them. 40% of the world lives in those countries. There's a 47-mile strip of the world where Afghanistan borders China, and that strip has a 3.5-hour time difference. Nepal has a 2-hour, 15-minute time difference from China to its north, and a 15-minute time difference from India to its south. And there are a bunch of Central American countries that use a time zone 1 hour earlier than South American countries to their east and Mexico to their west. It's arbitrary as all hell. So ultimately, it doesn't feel that weird that one country would want to shift things and skip a day to simplify its economy. In fact, there was actually some people near the start of the new millennium who tried developing an entirely new time system. In 1998, MIT's Media Lab and the Swatch Company teamed up to develop something called Swatch Internet Time, a unified time zone based on 1,000 beats per day, a new framework for time that acknowledged that our interconnected world would technically exist all at one single time. But it never ended up catching on, though, because ultimately we're still animals and we all like to sleep when it's dark out and wake up when the sun's out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pat. Oh God, I gotta stop my video here. Oh, timer, no. There we go. Thank you so much for that, Pat. I did not know that at all. And my favorite experience in this show is learning things I did not know, which is honestly this entire show, because I'm a dipshit. Up next, we have Elizabeth Fetterolf. Elizabeth, are you around?
Yeah, I'm just sharing my screen right now.
Classic Elizabeth.
Hey, everyone. Just a quick preface to this. This presentation is adapted from a longer teach-in that I did in mid-April that was 45 minutes long, and I've managed to cut it down to 4 minutes, which was a very fun challenge. So I'm ready when you are, Collin.
All right, 3, 2, 1, go for it.
Oh, sorry. Wait, Collin, can we start over? Sorry about that. Is that okay?
Yep, 3, 2, 1. Go for it.
Great. So the personal is political. Though no one definitively knows who said this first, Audre Lorde popularized this phrase in her iconic essay on radical Black feminism, "The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House." And the idea would become the backbone of the battered women's movement, a movement that would ironically fail to take Lorde's point to heart. Early battered women's shelters and rape crisis centers, influenced by widespread liberation movements such as civil rights, second wave feminism, Black Power movement, LGBTQ liberation, and New Left movements, were rooted in mutual aid. They developed, as many mutual aid groups do, as a response to the failures of the state, hospitals, police, the courts. So these early shelters operated outside of it. No professional credentials were required to work there, and current organizers recruited volunteers from the women that they were serving. There was a natural ebb and flow between the caretakers and the care seekers. So most of this sounds good, right? What happened? What happened was an alliance with the prison industrial complex and the nonprofit industrial complex. The entrance of the National Organization for Women, one of the largest and most powerful players in the mainstream ladies lib movement, helped solidify the battered women's movement, ill-fated romance with the criminal justice system. If the motto before was personal is political, the movement line became domestic violence is a crime. This era of the movement was defined by the fight to pass the Violence Against Women Act in 1994. Violence Against Women Act, or VAWA, was part of the largest crime bill in US history, signed by rapist Bill Clinton and authored by rapist and likely Democratic nominee Joe Biden. The TLDR of this bill is that it made domestic violence legally a crime, and it was a part of a $30 billion piece of legislation that provided funding for $100,000 worth of new police officers and $9.7 billion worth of prisons, bolstering the rapidly growing prison industrial complex. VAWA led to the criminalization of survivors, almost entirely Black and brown women, queers, and gender deviants. While many middle-class white women celebrated the passage of VAWA as a victory for feminism, survivors like Marissa Alexander, a Black mother who defended herself from her abusive husband, were jailed for protecting themselves from harm. Many Black feminist organizers, the most famous perhaps being Angela Davis, critiqued this alliance. In Women, Race, and Class, Davis points out that prison is a site of state-sanctioned rape, and the cops perpetrate state-sanctioned violence against Black folks, while having one of the highest rates of domestic violence of any profession in their own personal lives. But the prison industrial complex was not the only strange bedfellow of the anti-violence movement. What happened to all of those grassroots battered women's shelters and rape crisis centers that were based on mutual aid that we talked about? Well, they became 501c3 nonprofits as a part of the nonprofit industrial complex. The 1960s marked an explosion of radical social liberation movements. At the same time, from the 1950s to the 1970s, the number of Ayres registered charities increased from around 50,000 to around 300,000 by the late 70s. The nonprofit industrial complex developed into neoliberalism's solution to these movements that threatened its very core. So what do we have now? Service organizations are largely depoliticized, and few have a systemic analysis of how racialized capitalism and the nuclear family laid the bedrock for rape and abuse. Many of these organizations are overwhelmingly staffed by middle-class white cis women, serving primarily Black and brown working-class women. And despite efforts by queer organizers, they often exclude queer and trans folks in their language and services. Now, these organizations themselves aren't evil or bad. In fact, a lot of them provide useful resources to individuals, but the system that we have now is defined by carceral logic and has crushed our imagination about how we can move towards community care and healing. But it did not always have to be this way. Recently, I read Mariame Kaba's new zine, in which she republishes an open letter from 1977 written by Santa Cruz Women Against Rape. The authors in it describe the early stages of the movement: dual power, mutual aid, hatred for the state, prisons, police. They stress the need for an international revolutionary movement against rape and domination in all forms. At the end of the letter, they invite the anti-violence movement to join them. The movement was not by default in coalition with the carceral state. As Mariame Kaba says in her foreword to the letter, one side won, the others lost. History did not play out in a series of waves, but rather in contests and fights. I've been thinking constantly about this movement, about who won and why as we navigate ours. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. That was, I also saw your 45-minute version of that, and like, fantastic work trimming that down. Like, that's a lot to trim down. Up next, we have Stevie Rowe. Stevie, are you around?
Hello, I am around. Give me one moment to share my screen. I was so excited to do something really stupid. So while this has been wonderful information, I'm about to tell you something that is completely useless and barely entertaining. Okay.
The best guy.
I'm not sure if you can see this.
Yes, I see your background or your desktop.
See my desktop. That's not what I wanted to share. I'm sorry. One moment. Don't think it's gonna be possible to see both my face and the screen, which is unfortunate because
You can do it if you keep your camera on.
there we go. Okay, here we go.
Yep.
Now we can see. Awesome. Sweet. All right. So we are going to talk about children's Bible quizzing. Okay. Children's Bible quizzing is a event that happens in churches, obviously, but it also is kind of a niche thing that probably, even if you went to church growing up, you didn't know about. Here we go. So what it's not. Children's Bible quizzing is not Bible quizzing. Bible quizzing is a kind of more mainstream Christian idea. And if you Google it, it's going to have a lot more of like the buzzers and the bonus rounds and something kind of akin to the end of Mean Girls quizzing. That is not this. It is also not competitive. I know, it seems completely antithetical. There is a very strict rule that in the case of a tie, there will be no tiebreakers. This is a everybody's special, everyone goes home with something. The irony is that this is the thing that made me the whetstone, that made me today the most competitive person on the planet, as I did it from the ages of 4 to like 16. Anyway, it's, again, not mainstream. Like I said, it was probably found in like a small amount of Nazarene churches. It still happens today, but again, very small. The biggest Facebook group for the whole country has 280 people in it. It's not that big of a deal. It is not easy. Very difficult. We'll get to that later. What it is a very low tech. We'll also get into that in just a second. It is a breeding ground for stage moms. There's a rule that allows you to contest questions, and oh my God, do mothers know all the rules about how they can contest questions. And it is a pathway to glory for children who have tiger mothers. All right, so gameplay. Let's get into how this works. Questions are answered by using this box. As you can see, there's a 1, 2, 3, 4. All questions are multiple choice. You would take out the number that's correct, put it in front of your box, and scorekeepers would then notate who got the answers right and who didn't. You don't know as you're playing whether you got the answer right or wrong. Okay, just similar to this right here. Yes, so you go through 2 rounds of 25 questions, not knowing exactly where you stand in anything unless you have memorized the entire question and answer book of 500 questions, which was how I would play the game. If you got to be creative, that was not part of our plan. You got to make your own boxes, but no, these are the standard boxes that you would have to buy through the corporation that makes these things. All right, so what's covered? Okay, so each year a different book or maybe a set of books, like in the case of 1st and 2nd Samuel, are used. So you can see this list here. I was really good at Matthew, Acts, Genesis, and Exodus. I'm not gonna lie, got a little bored with the 1st and 2nd Samuels. I started Bible quizzing early, but I definitely went in world years, which we'll get into later, which are what those little asterisks mean right here. It is, well, you'll see. Levels of competition, invitational, practicing at your local church, not a big deal, not official. Zone, area, it's your first level of competition. It's you, maybe one other church. Go find your rivals, beat them down. District, it's probably like your city, but more likely your entire state. Regional would be 2 or more districts or states versus states. And then there's world, which is not the world. It is more like nationals at best, more like kind of Southeast United States. All right, I'm gonna play you this. We don't have a lot of time, but I'm gonna play you just a little bit of this video so you can understand exactly how some people take this very too seriously. So apparently my entire thing is not presenting. That's cool. Oh no. Okay, well, my time's about to be up, but I will have to tell you this. You didn't get to see any of those wonderful visuals. I'm so sad. Okay, anyway, the moral of this story is that in 1997, they had the very first world championship. I am that world champion. Oops, here we go. Yep, there we go. Boom. Okay, so I am that world quiz champion. I'm the very first Bible quiz world champion. Again, not the world, but I got titled in San Antonio. I'm very sorry that you didn't get to see my presentation. And yeah, Bye, guys. I'm so sorry. This is so sad. Ah!
Stevie, wait, can we try the video one more time?
Yeah, I can try again. Hold on one second. I'm so sad you guys didn't get to see this presentation. Let me see here. Oops. Give me 1 second. Thank you for being so patient. Oh my goodness, guys. We did this so well in practice. Okay, there we go. There we go. All right, can we see this now? Yes. So, yep, there we go. Boop, boop. That's the box I was talking about. 1, 2, 3, 4. There you go. Boom. Now you understand. That's better. Oh, there we go.
It's time. Discover. Master. Review. Focus. Train.
Well, for some reason, again, Stevie, the video
I know. It just dropped out. I'm so sorry, guys. But hopefully someday I'll get to share all that information with you live because it's real fucking weird.
It's so good to have a champion here on the stream with us, and who knows, you might also be a champion again tonight.
All right, well, go back to learning about important social issues. Bye.
Thank you so much, Stevie. Up next, we have Talia Feldberg.
Hello. Okay, so let me share my screen. Is it shared?
I see your screen. You want to try switching a slide real quick just to make sure that works too?
Yep.
Yep, that looks great. All right, fantastic.
All right.
You ready here? Let's get the timer going.
Great.
3, 2, 1, go for it.
All right. Hi, folks. So I'm going to talk to you about hair jewelry. And of course, as you may have guessed, by hair jewelry, I do not mean jewelry for hair, but jewelry made out of hair. So in England in the 18th and 19th centuries, and eventually in America as well, it was extremely common to have jewelry containing the hair of loved ones. You're probably thinking, okay, I've read Wuthering Heights, lots of people had lockets with dead people's hair in them. This is true, but it is only a small part of it, no pun intended. So while hair jewelry was indeed extremely common for mourning purposes, mourning with a U, people also gave each other hair jewelry to commemorate events or as a gift of love or friendship. For example, you might give your best friend or significant other something that included both of your hair woven together. So that's what that brooch on the middle bottom presumably is. So another style of hair jewelry was called palette work. This involved making elaborate designs with the hair, common motifs including mourning images like willows and urns, like this ring on the left, and yes, that is totally made out of hair, feathers like the brooch at the top, and floral motifs. Finally, there was another strand, again, no pun intended, of hair work called table work, which developed in the 1820s or so. This is jewelry that was straight up woven out of hair. This was super popular, partially because hair was a cheap and plentiful material, so it was more accessible than a lot of other jewelry. Quick timeline of hair jewelry. People often date the first hair mourning jewelry to the execution of Charles I in 1649, when his supporters cut some of the hair off of his severed head and made jewelry out of it. Some of this also comes from 1813, when his body was rediscovered, and I guess they cut more hair off of it and made more jewelry. As I mentioned, hair work was definitely popular throughout the 18th and early 19th centuries, but it reached its height, particularly for mourning purposes, in the mid-19th century. So some background factors. 1, Victorians were super, super sentimental. They lived for this shit. 2, Victorians had a pretty obsessive relationship with death. Part of this was an extreme mourning culture that involved, for women at least, abiding by strict clothing rules for up to 2 years. This meant you couldn't wear normal jewelry. So here's an example of a woman in mourning with some hair jewelry. So there were also some more direct factors. A lot of Victorian culture was people sort of directly taking cues off of Queen Victoria. She famously lost her husband, Prince Albert, this fellow right here, in 1861, and was completely devastated and actively in mourning for the remaining 40 years of her life. Here is the whole fam in mourning wear. So she started wearing jewelry containing his hair constantly, including this locket. Once people found out about this, hair jewelry became not just popular, but actively fashionable. The thing that boosted its popularity in America was the Civil War. A lot of people were saying goodbye to folks, potentially for the last time, as seen as in this lovely stock photo, and they wanted jewelry to remember and or mourn them with. At the same time this is happening, people start publishing books and articles about how to make hair jewelry, specifically table work, that's the woven kind, at home. So people had always sent hair off to be made into jewelry, and they still did, but this made it a lot more accessible. Unfortunately, I could not find any information about how non-white groups might have interacted with this trend, so that remains a question that I have. Anyway, this book, The Self-Instructor in the Art of Hair Work, Dressing Hair, Making Curls, Switches, Braids, and Hair Jewelry of Every Description by Mark Campbell was particularly popular. There's Mr. Campbell at his braiding table. So a lot of middle-class white women already spent their time knitting, crocheting, etc., loved their crafts, and this seemed like a pretty natural extension. Again, no pun intended. And as you can see here, sometimes the stuff they made got pretty elaborate. Another fun thing people did during this period was attach ambrotypes, which is an early form of photography, to jewelry. So you could see the person whose hair it was while wearing their hair on your wrist. So hair jewelry fell out of fashion around the turn of the century for a number of reasons, including changing style, social mores, and relationship to hygiene. Hair work is still being created, however, by folks like renowned artist Melanie Belinker, whose work you can see here. I think it's actually quite lovely. Finally, I thought we could end super briefly, very close being over, Collin, with some hair jewelry from some historical figures. So this is Marie Antoinette's hair. These are mourning rings made from the hair of Alexander Hamilton. This is a bracelet made from the combined hair of Emily and Anne Bronte, and it was owned by their sister Charlotte, who outlived them quite a bit. And here is a locket with Lincoln's hair in it. And here is a hair tree. And on that note, the end.
Whew. Whew. I got a message from Mike, who said, I'm beginning to start thinking that these puns were actually intended. So, Mike's blowing up your spot there, Talia.
I admit nothing.
Thank you so much. Truly unnerving. I've just been watching Hannibal recently, so hair jewelry really hits differently. Up next, we have Kev Berry here. Kev, are you around?
Yes, I'm around and ready to go. I am going to go. I don't know if I can see the clock. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, hold on. Let me move this around. Great. So this is a very beautiful and moving presentation I made. Please be quiet. We have 42 slides to get through. Listen carefully. I'm going to talk really fast. I didn't rehearse this. Sorry, Meghan. I'm sorry if this runs long, Collin. I'll do my best. I've had a lot of coffee. Oh, fuck, it won't move. This is me in high school. This is also me in high school. In high school, I was gay. In high school, I was bullied. It wasn't fun. I looked like that. Imagine looking like that. But in one instance, I was able to use my queerness, or as one of the priests who taught me sex ed called it one year, he called it faggotry. I was able to use my queerness, my faggotry to my advantage, which brings me to my topic. This is me dressed as Sweeney Todd. My topic is Shakira's 2010 World Cup anthem, Waka Waka, this time for Africa. Now, hold on a minute, you may be saying to yourself, you may be saying, what the hell does Kev being bullied and gay have to do with anything? And you'd be right, really not much. It doesn't have much to do with this song, except relatively recently, there was an Instagram filter that took your face and randomized it and applied it to the face of a pop queen as she danced her way through an acclaimed queer canon music video like Waka Waka or Oops, I Did It Again, or a couple of Robin music videos were in there. And one of these music videos, like I just said, was Waka Waka. Uh-oh. Okay, see, that's a screenshot from the thing. Okay, and then I would respond to several of my friends who got the Waka Waka video on the randomizer, and it was like my friend Alex's face or my friend Aaron's face. Oh, it's my friend Alex's birthday. He's watching too. It would be Aaron's face on the on Shakira's body doing Waka Waka, and I would respond by taking a selfie video of myself singing the entirety of Waka Waka, and all of my friends would say, "Oh my God, Kev, how did you know that song?" And and I conflated two memories. I would respond by telling them one of two memories, but I only recently realized that they were conflated because I repressed the way it actually happened at my all-boys Catholic high school. So in seventh, that's me in high school. In seventh grade, my science teacher was super into soccer, and when I was in seventh grade, the World Cup happened. This was in 2006, not 2010. But in 11th grade, my Spanish teacher was also super into soccer and the World Cup. And one day, my Spanish teacher said, all right, anyone who knows, he said, anyone who learns Waka Waka in its entirety and performs it for the class, you won't have to take a test, and it won't affect your average at all. So you'll have one less test affecting your average. So it was a calculated risk. And this is another screenshot from the music video of Waka Waka. Waka Waka is a song in Spanish by Colombian singer Shakira, featuring rap verses in Cameroonian Fang by Freshlyground, a South African Afrofusion group. Folks were up in arms. Folks were upset, up in arms about the whole thing. Because they didn't want the South African World Cup anthem being sung by a Colombian singer who wasn't from South Africa. The song, the chorus of the song is Waka Waka, Zamina Mina, Waka Waka, it's Zamina Mina Zangalewa. We're borrowed from Zangalewa, a 1986 song recorded by Cameroonian band Golden Sounds, hit in Africa and also in Colombia. This won't, oh God fucking damn it. This was my first profile picture. The song features lyrics like, you're a good soldier, choosing your battles, pick yourself up and dust yourself off, get back in the saddle, and people are raising their expectations, go on and feed them, this is your moment, no hesitations. Songs about soldiers going into battle, this, that, and the other thing, persistence, strength, yada, yada, yada. Ultimately, the haters lost because Waka Waka, this time for Africa, peaked at #1 on record charts in 15 countries worldwide. It peaked at 38 in the United States, but in my heart, it's in the top 10, top 3, whatever. This won't fucking, the space bar. Which brings me back to me. I realized there was very little information about the song in there, but as much as this is about the song, it is also about me. This presentation is queer memoir, surprise, happy pride, you fucks. I'm not here to win the $10. I'm here to make friends and celebrate pride. Fucking God damn it. This is what I look like in the high school. So here we're about to have a little moment of triumph for a boy who looked like this and who was gay. The day of the contest arrived in Spanish class. My teacher, who I won't name because he's dead to me, because a few days after the challenge, he outed me to the class. He asked if there was anyone who wanted to try their hand at the full song, Waka Waka, this time for Africa. And I and maybe 10 others raised our hands. We were told to line up in the front of the room. I was 6th or 7th. The teacher would tell us to start singing the song. And if we messed up one word or stumbled over one syllable, he would yell, sit, and you lost the challenge. You had to take the next test. None of the first half of the group made it through without getting told to sit down in a chair. And then it was my turn. All right. And then I get up. All right. I get up. I do the thing. I make it through. I make it all the way through. I do a flawless performance of the thing, including there's this really hard rap section. It was very difficult. And then when I was finished, I was met with silence. I had executed a flawless performance of the World Cup anthem in 2010, and everyone knew it, including the teacher and including all of my enemies and all of my bullies in class. And then the teacher said one word, and he said, all right. And then he sent me to sit down. I was the only student in all of his classes to make it through the entire song and not have to take the next test. And that's what we call fighting for gay rights. And this is a picture of me at the Rihanna concert that I went to because Kesha was opening, and then it ended up being one of the best concerts of my life. Thank you.
Happy Pride, Kev.
Thank you. Gay rights.
Gay rights. Incredible. Oh, blows me over. Up next, we have Landry Levine, my timekeeper from when I was presenting here. Landry, you lurking somewhere?
Hello, hello.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm warm.
Can you hear me okay? And can you see okay?
You sound great. The visuals, very good.
Okay, perfect. Let's do it.
Let's do it. 3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome, everyone. Today I want to talk about a specific experience you might have had in a used bookstore. If you're like me and you always wind up looking for the Marks section in used bookstores. Next to all of the newer books, you can very often find old, tattered copies of books by Marx or Engels or Lenin that look something like this. Now, this is the first one that I found in a bookstore, this small pamphlet-like little thing. On the inside cover, I saw that it was published by the Foreign Languages Press, based out of Peking, which is an older romanization for Beijing in China. I was so interested in this odd find, a book from a Chinese publisher in an American used bookstore, that I've kept an eye out for these books, and I've started collecting them. At this point, I have 4 of them by various authors. All of them are published by the Foreign Languages Press. These things get interesting when we take a look at the years each of these copies was printed and published. We can see that all 4 books I have are from the late 1960s or from the 1970s. What makes this interesting is the historical context. China's Communist Party had been growing apart from the Soviet Union since 1956, when Khrushchev denounced Stalin's crimes, and tensions rose in the wake of the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, as the Soviet Union pursued peaceful coexistence with the West, and the People's Republic of China advocated for a tougher stance. The Sino-Soviet split, as it was called, escalated as China broke relations with the Soviet bloc, Mao stating that counter-revolution had reestablished capitalism in the Soviet Union. In this context, we can see the printing spree by the Chinese Foreign Languages Press, which had been founded earlier in 1952, as an attempt to assert Chinese leadership among the international communist movement. Interestingly, multiple of the books I've collected note that they're utilizing the English translations done earlier by the Moscow Foreign Languages Publishing House, highlighting the continuity in publishing as China tried to pick up the mantle that they felt that the Soviets had dropped. So what do the Foreign Languages Press books look like on the inside? First of all, they've all got a page that just says "Workers of the World Unite" on the top, which is a nice touch. Then they've got the name of the publishing house and the year that it was published. And for these, it's always mid-60s or sometime in the 70s. And finally, all of these also include a cool portrait of the author, which I guess it also has like a replication of their signature. This is Mark's, and for those curious, here are the authors of the other ones I've collected as well. So why do we see these Foreign Languages Press editions of Marxist classics only from the 60s and 70s? Well, in 1978, reformists in the Chinese Communist Party, led by Deng Xiaoping, began the program of reform and opening up. Since 1978, the Foreign Languages Press has shifted its focus accordingly. Rather than pumping out Marxist classics, it now focuses on information about China itself, like 1978's New Women in New China, hoping to present Chinese culture, history, and so on to an international audience. I guess the main thing that interests me about the Foreign Languages Press is to think about how different access to information was before, like, the internet. Nowadays, I can go online and I can read things from a variety of different viewpoints and authors and different biases, people with different agendas. But in the 60s, for instance, information was very dependent on not only like access to bookstores and libraries, but also publishers, translators, distributors. The export of Marxist classics, first by Soviet and then Chinese publishers, towards European and American audiences greatly informed the access that those audiences had to Marxist thought. These were cheap, mass market books meant to be read by lots of people, and evidenced by the fact that you can still find them in used bookstores. I think this can partially explain the large influence that Mao and Chinese communism had on especially France and the US during the revolts of 68, but it also raises questions about who we don't get to read. For instance, authors purged or censored or executed by the Soviet Union in 38 or before. So I think it just raises interesting questions about where knowledge and information come from, the historical and political context for that knowledge. And I hope we can all think about where information is coming from and what's missing as we go about our lives today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Landry. How much do those books cost when you have found them in bookstores historically?
That's the great thing, is that they're usually like $7, like somewhere between $6 and $10. So like really cheap for like what is like a book from like 50 years ago. like in an interesting context.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Meghan Finn. And special guests. Mostly special guests, I think. Working.
Let's see if there's any up here. Oh, there's a couple. Oh, there's a lot.
Isaac, can you talk about just how you changed the letters of your name on your wall?
I changed them.
Jigglypuff.
I'm saying I changed them to AFACI. Charmander,
Izaki?
Glaceon, and Sobble. Sobble Cubone.
Oh gosh, I don't know if we're gonna be able to get through all these.
We can't have 4 minutes if you want to know. We have to have like 10 minutes to get through all of these. Okay. I forgot his name.
Okay, well let's scratch this one. Let's start with one that you have the name.
Oh, okay. Vileplume. I know something about Vileplume because Vileplume, if Bloom makes bad smell, Vileplume can make it good.
Oh, wow.
Roman pants. Okay. We know it's a water plant Ace. So it can use Aurora Veil. When Vulpix is on the ground, he pushes a thing above him away like this.
Okay. All right.
Everybody should know about Pikachu. He has Thunderbolt, and he can do a lot of stuff, and he has a Z move. A Z move are when you go like this, and it's the powerfulest move that you can have. And then you go, and next, one that Pikachu evolved into. Raichu. So this is a Pokemon that can do 100 damage, so it can like take that thing out, and then it can if it's a lowland form, it can surf on its tail. This is Charmander. He can breathe fire, and yeah, he has a fire on his tail. And he's similar to this Pokemon, Cubone. Because this is Cubone, but if you put his helmet on, he looks more like Cubone, but this looks like Charmander, right?
Yeah, it does sort of look like Charmander.
Well, this is Mr. Mime. You can see Mr. Mime in the Detective Pikachu movie. You can pause this video and watch it, and then you can come back on this video. And now Sobble. Sobble is an interesting Pokemon. He evolves into Drizzle, which I can make Sobble into right now.
Aww. He looks sad.
And Sobble can surf on his tail and fly! Like this. Doesn't it look like some grass? But when you tune it, it turns into this! Pouncing! Pops. And Isaac, I need to do one. Now, this is a Pokemon that it is named Jigglypuff, and it can make you go to sleep. Okay, yeah. Throw that up, Isaac. Okay, Glaceon is next. He's an ice type. Glaceon can use Ice Speed, and he can also use Double Kick. Umbreon, he's a Shadow type. He can use Shadow Ball, of course. He's a Shadow type, so he's also a Darkness type.
Wow, this one's cool.
Bulbasaur. It can have vines sticking out of his bulb and use Vine Whip.
All right. Can you guys say bye to everybody at home?
Bye, 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 bye,
Go for
bye.
listening.
I hope you stay safe.
Thank you so much, Megan and the Bubs. That is our first fully pre-recorded 4YI that oh my God, I don't want you to see my house. First fully pre-recorded 4YI that I think we've ever had. So thank you for blazing new trails here in the world of For Your Information. All right, up next is the one, the only Mike Fracentese. We have 3 more pieces for you tonight. Mike's is next.
Okay, can you hear me? Are we good? Do I have audio?
Yes, can hear you.
Beautiful. Let's figure out how to share my screen. Okay. All right.
Sorry, Elizabeth just joined the call and was video sharing from the bathroom.
Oh, that's great. That's not weird. Cool. Are we ready?
Yeah, I'm ready if you are.
All right. Start me off whenever.
Go for it.
Okay. So the title of this presentation is Pofo delenda est. That is a reference to the old, Latin phrase Carthago delenda est, which was Carthage must be destroyed. This is about why the Poetry Foundation must be destroyed. I'm a poet. I'm allowed to say that. So what is poetry? Don't worry, not going there. Poetry magazine was founded in 1912 by an art critic for the Chicago Tribune. It was initially established with a policy about including poets. It was all about including poetry that was the best poetry around, no matter who had written it. That's going to come up later because that's not what has happened. So just as an example of the quality of this magazine, T.S. Eliot was in there, brought into it by Ezra Pound, these amazing, fantastic American poets that we all adore and respect. T.S. Eliot was an anti-Semite, Ezra Pound was an anti-Semite, and a literal fascist, not oh, he's kind of fashy, but a literal fascist and Freddie Mussolini. These guys sucked. So Ruth Lilly and the Poetry Foundation, Ruth Lilly granted the Poetry Foundation, granted Poetry Magazine, $200 million from her estate before she died. On receiving the gift, the magazine reorganized into the Poetry Foundation, which I will now call POFO. It's one of the largest lit foundations in the world. Ruth Lilly was the heir of the Eli Lilly pharmaceutical firm, which, that's big pharma money. There's a lot of problematic stuff there. So the money that has funded POFO is not good money, first of all. So over the past few years, there's been a lot of criticism of the Poetry Foundation for good reason. In 2017, the Vita count revealed how poor trans and non-binary representation was in poetry. In response to that, Poetry announced a trans issue of exclusively trans poets. The guest editor of that issue made this tweet, which really was critical of trans literature, TGNC, trans and gender nonconforming literature. In response to this, of course, Poetry did not apologize or explain, but they canceled the issue. This led to the Beyond Special Issue movement, which you can find on Twitter, of trans and gender nonconforming poets critiquing the establishment. Also, there's been fascism recently in poetry. Poetry published an article or a poem by Toby Martinez de la Rivas that was widely panned for its fascistic imagery. He was paid $2,000 for that poem. This is the guy. In response to this, in response to all the criticism, Poetry let him publish an essay-length response, giving him even more of a platform. Now, this year, Poetry's finally come under real fire and has started to implode, which is great. On June 3rd, after the police murder of George Floyd, they released an incredibly weak statement. In response, a group of Ruth Lilly fellows penned this letter. Don't read it right now, but it's very critical of the Poetry Foundation's response to this crisis. The letter called for the resignation of POFO leadership, in addition to other demands. Hundreds of poets signed on, pledging to not submit work to Poetry until demands were met. So some of the fellows who signed this letter, or who authored this letter, in fact, Kaveh Akbar, all of these people who I don't have time to list now, including some amazing poets that you might recognize. Boom. The signatories list is much, much longer, including some of my dear friends. I'm not on this list because I have not engaged with poetry professionally, and it felt weird to do that. But all of these amazing people signed on this list, refusing to submit to Poetry until demands were met. And demands have been met. Strikes work. The president, Henry Beenan, resigned and said that he has lost respect for the staff who did not defend themselves or the foundation. He's also just a total piece of shit. Sorry for the language there. He worked for the U.S. Department of State, for the National Security Council, for the CIA, for the World Bank. I mean, he's been involved in American empire and colonialism for years. So why destroy the Poetry Foundation? I would argue that these resignations were a Band-Aid on a larger institutional problem. The Poetry Foundation is a big poetry business institution with money from Big Pharma and government connections. I really love this quote from R.M. Haynes, who is a leftist poet and critic, who writes that, put bluntly, prestige effectively turns poets into advertisements for an aesthetic meritocracy, for the lure of success, for the special institution giving the prize, etc. So the existence of this prestigious poetry institution creates this large business of poetry that aspiring artists pay into. It's really a pay-to-play scene, and it shouldn't be. So in conclusion, capitalism needs art, but art doesn't need capitalism. You should make your art without engaging with these huge, oppressive, imperial structures. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so much, Mike. I have been really excited to hear about this and hear you talking about this while you've worked on it. And good to know why we have to destroy the Poetry Foundation. If anyone has any other art institutions that we should destroy, feel free to mention them in the chat. Up next, our penultimate act is Hallie Ayres. Hallie, you around?
Yes. Let me share my screen. Okay. Cool.
All right, looks good. You ready?
Yep.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so this is a socialist solution to shit in 19th century France. This is a sewage farm. A sewage farm uses sewage for irrigation and fertilizing agricultural land. Sewage farming and wastewater irrigation is impractical in protecting crops from direct sewage contact and infectious pathogen transfer. As a result, there are very few examples of sewage farms, as most of the world uses conventional sewage treatment plants as an alternative. But in post-industrial revolution Western Europe, sewage farming was the shit. Germany, England, Wales, Ireland, and France all had bustling sewage farm scenes. So where did this shitty idea come from? This is Pierre Leroux. He also looked like this and this. Throughout the 1830s to 1850s, staunch socialist Pierre Leroux devoted himself to a theory he developed called circulus. Leroux was quite concerned with the Malthusian catastrophe, a phenomenon that Thomas Malthus, writing in 1798, predicted would occur when a population growth outpaced agricultural production. Leroux believed the world was hurtling towards this catastrophe for one fundamental reason. Humans had committed the grave sin of regarding biological excrement as a substance to be discarded rather than a potential source of great wealth. Since individuals are responsible for consuming enough food for each of us to survive, Leroux proposed that individuals should also be responsible for producing that same quantity of food. Leroux's solution to averting the Malthusian catastrophe was shit. In place of wage work, Leroux imagined a perpetual recycling process. Humans consume food and create waste, which in turn produces more food. Each person would gather their poop and deliver it to the state as a tax. This waste would then be used to fertilize crop fields, increasing agricultural production while eliminating the need for human labor. Leroux sums up his imperative to collapse production and consumption in this directive: make bread with human excrement. By the 19th century, animal manure had transformed agriculture in France and much of Europe. Farm animals counted less for their labor power, for which human workers could always compensate, than for their constant supply of manure, which served to fertilize crop rotations. Leroux seized upon this model as an alternative to wage labor and as an escape from capitalist exploitation and monetary economies. By acknowledging the human body as a self-sustaining machine, society would progress beyond the demand for labor exploitation, thus rendering moot all class conflict. The Malthusian catastrophe becomes an obsolete concern as well, since supply and demand are equal because they are flowing from the same material, i.e. humans. Feeding oneself is not only survival, but it is also the only form of work humans need to engage in. When we eat, he argued, we recreate our own food. But what about money? Money would be replaced by shit. Arable land and fertilized soil are the pinnacle of an anti-capitalist savings bank. It's a savings bank that is impervious to theft and fraud, and it just continues to grow bigger. Shit-treated soil accumulates and gains value over time. The idea didn't quite take hold. The vast majority of Parisians expressed disgust at eating crops fertilized by their own waste. However, Victor Hugo was a close friend of Leroux's and does include a tacit endorsement of the circulus theory in Les Miserables, writing, "Paris throws 25 million francs a year into the water. We believe we are purging the city, we are weakening the population. A sewer is a misunderstanding. The wealth Paris lost in its sewers, if used for welfare and for pleasures, would double the splendor of Paris, such that one can say that the great frugality of Paris is its marvelous fete, its orgy, its gold flowing from full hands, its splendor, its luxury, its magnificence is its sewer. The sewer was the fruit of the blindness of a bad political economy." Leroux's proposal, though he lobbied for it extensively, was never accepted by municipal governments. However, his theories did assist in developing the waste management systems we still use to this day. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I am gobsmacked. That's I just got a text while your presentation was going on from my mom who said, "This must be the socialist edition of 4YI today," to which I respond, "Good, and may they all be." Thank you so much, Hallie. We are on our final presentation now. This is Liz Bennett. Liz, are you around?
I sure am. Thank you for having me. And I hope you're ready for more socialism.
Oh God, yes. Let's do it.
All right. Hold on. Just let me, here we go. Can you see everything okay?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Just let me, I totally didn't finish this presentation just now, by the way. Okay, here we go. So, all right.
Go for it.
Minion memes. You've seen them made, you've seen them subverted, you've seen them proliferate across different platforms. Minion memes allow minion meme sharers to articulate particular relationships to different politicized spaces, such as the home, the virtual, and the spaces between people. From what I've seen, some of the most prolific deployers of minion memes have been white suburban moms. Following this observation, I would like to situate minion memes within the disciplinary assemblage of critical geographic political economy. By analyzing minions through the lens of geographic political economy, we can understand how white minion meme sharing mom subjectivities are created and reconfigured through an articulation of a relationship to racialized and gendered labor. Today, I put forth a framework that can engender a political economic analysis of minion memes. The minions and the memes in which they are simulacrally represented themselves are mobile. They move to serve different masters, they move to perform labor, they move in the form of memes. I argue that minion memes deserve to serve a dual purpose: to reify existing class and race labor regimes, and to reflect and offer commentary upon the alienation that white women experience in their domestic and external to the household labor. Minion memes are used to signal a pithy detachment from and signal criticism of the disappointments and power struggles inherent to different kinds of extra household and household labor. For a resentful white suburban mom, regardless of her occupation, minions are aspirational. They cannot be alienated from their labor because their identities, their embodied experiences, and their subjectivities are co-constituted with their status as permanent servants. To borrow from Marx's 1844 manuscripts, economic and philosophical manuscripts, they cannot be alienated from their labor because they are the labor. Many of the white women who post these minion memes, regardless of their professions, are duly caregivers and reliant on care brought about by labor regimes based on colonial labor regimes and political economic formations. Let us not forget that Minyonese language is based heavily on Tagalog, Ukrainian, and on an admixture of other languages. The reality is that liberal multiculturalism and white have-it-all motherhood is facilitated by the exploitation of Black, Indigenous, and women of color, as outlined in the texts such as Catherine Choi's Empire of Care. Care, in this context, is like kind of an is both an articulation between minions and their master, and a way through which white suburban moms can express opinions about the different labor regimes they've been forced into and take up by choice. The minions help express white women's ambivalence towards these economies of affective care, to borrow from Sarah Ahmed. The kinds of domestic political economy, both internal and external to the household, is expressed in different ways. Here on the left, you can see a wonderful piece of merch from a gun show that takes up the popular right-wing extremist phrase "Moulin Lab" and puts it on minions. As you can see, one of them has a gun. It's kind of horrifying. If we take the 2015 Minions film to be the canonical text of Minion lifeways and political economy, something I never thought I would say during all of my years as a graduate student, and sorry, mom and dad, I guess, minions seek to help the most nefarious master. The use of minion memes indicates the movements of minions from laborers in the service of evil to different kinds of signs that indicate different relationships to affective labor, and as a currency in an affective economy of care. Minions themselves move betwixt imagined and domestic spheres, once referred to so pithily in the memes. Let me see how much time I have.
Wait, you're still sharing.
I know, I'm still sharing my screen. Yeah, so I actually finished there. I meant to keep it kind of concise. But anyway, I have a list of texts that I use.
Sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so anyway, here is my bibliography. Thanks.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Amazing.
Okay, that was perfect.
That brings us to the end of our presentations for today. Let me stop this clock. That is an odious energy. There we go. That brings us to the end of today's presentations. Our secret judge is now going to decide on the awards and will let me know when they're decided upon. In the meantime, I want to let you know that if you are interested in presenting in a 4YI, hopefully we'll, now that we have found that this is a functional way to do them, think about doing another one next month in July. So if that is something you are interested in participating in, you can shoot me a message at Collin, COLLIN, @thetanknyc.org. That's Collin with 2 L's at thetanknyc.org. Or, if you know me, just get in contact with me some other way. So you can get on the list and do 4 minutes on whatever that niche thing is that you really love talking about and don't get to talk about enough. Stevie, do you want to try your video one more time?
Absolutely.
All right. Back to the World of Bible quiz here.
Let me know if you can hear it.
Yes.
Whoops. All right.
It's time. Discover. Master. Review. Focus. Train. Loving his word, trusting his word. It's time. Let's get digging.
Whew, unbelievable energy.
Yeah, so I have no idea exactly why there is a furry driving the truck. I have no idea what all of that is about, but I do know that it's a total lie that it's people from around the globe. It's not true. Don't believe it. It's just a few people from the southeastern part of the United States.
What more of the world is there, really?
I mean, that's kind of the problem, yeah.
I'm happy to announce that we have our awards. Tonight's guest judge was my dear friend Abby Norling-Ruggles from Minneapolis. What did Abby say? Abby said, many strong competitors. It was a difficult choice. Abby decided there were, so before the show, decided that the 2 awards were Best Graphic Design and Greatest Enthusiasm for a Niche Subject. The winner of tonight's Best Graphic Design Award is Talia Feldberg of hair jewelry fame. Congratulations, Talia. And the other award for Greatest Enthusiasm for a Niche Subject goes to Carinn Candelaria for your piece on the draft riots in 1863. Congratulations to you both. Thank you all so much for being with us tonight, both participants and anyone who's still sticking around on the YouTube stream. Thank you for being with us while we figured out our various tech issues. I'm sure there were many, but in actuality, doing this the last time that we did it at the tank was way more stressful than this was, because we went through 3 different projectors to find one that even worked at all. I was closer to crying at my job than I think I've ever been trying to set those projectors up. So this is a real improvement in that regard. I will Venmo you, Talia and Carinn. Thank you all so much for being with us. Again, my email is collin@thetanknyc.org if you want to get in on this. Have a great evening, everyone. Stay cool. Bye now. Yay! Oh God, how do I stop the stream? Just kidding, it's like this.
That was fun.